Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mega Movie Monday with me, Disregarding Henry, and
I, Felix from Film School Failure, I would formally like to welcome you all back to not the first, the second, and the third, but the fourth episode of Mega Movie Monday, baby.
that's right. And
Cheers to that.
yeah, and what was I going to say? Oh, yes. Just if you're new to the show, Mega Movie Monday, this is the show where we talk about mega movies.
Mega movies.
What is a mega movie, you might ask, hypothetically? Well, a mega movie is any movie that we feel is worth a discussion, worth sitting down and talking about, trying to figure out. It doesn't have to be new or old, doesn't have to be well known or obscure, doesn't have to be good or bad, just has to be something interesting, something worth talking about.
Something worth talking about.
And boy, do we have that this time.
Yeah, I'd say we have something worth talking about, but I don't know if I'd say something we have worth watching.
Oh, ouch. Yeah, this is my suggestion. This is my pick for this week. This week is my choice, and I chose Zack Snyder's Sucker Punch, which I'm sure is for most people an interesting choice. But this is one. Actually, brief history. This was actually my first choice for the show. When we first started doing it, I was like, oh, I know what my first choice is going to be, because I had just watched it at the time. It's like, I want to talk about Zack Snyder's Sucker Punch. But Felix had not seen it. He had to get a hold of a copy of the Blu-ray in order to watch it.
Right.
So we had to postpone this one. Did a few other episodes in the meantime because we didn't want to wait. But now we're finally we finally arrived at what was my original choice for the show. And, well, this is going to be an interesting one because I also rewatched the movie in preparation for the episode. And, yeah, it's quite a film, isn't it? I'd like to know, off the bat, what did you think of this movie?
I thought this movie was packed with potential. I've always kind of thought, what would happen if a talented director with a bunch of money was able to just throw together whatever the fuck he or she wanted to? And I think that's kind of what we got here with Sucker Punch. This film is big, it's bold, it's action-packed, it's pretty, technically impressive, but all that brawn and bigness, it just doesn't have a brain for me. I like the flick. I didn't like the flick. I feel like it had a lot going for it, but there was just more of it to me that was kind of weighing it down and making. I wasn't able to watch the extended cut, thank God. The extended,
Yeah.
the Blu-ray was far too damaged. I got a copy from my local library, and I mean my 4K Blu-ray player almost exploded. It wouldn't even register it, so I had to take it out and I had to put in the standard, the theatrical version, and that went through without a problem. But boy, I was almost pissed off at the end of this movie. I almost wanted to call you and tell you I was pissed off.
Oh, wow. Really?
Okay, I wasn't really that mad, but I was just kind of like, damn, like, I really hope he has some good explanations, because right now, I wouldn't watch it again, I guess is what I'm saying.
So the ending left you upset then? Like, unsatisfied?
It wasn't just the ending. The ending wasn't really that. The ending wasn't upsetting to me. The film wasn't upsetting. It was more frustrating than anything, because I like Zack Snyder.
Yes,
I was one of the few people. I think there's two of us on the planet who actually liked Watchmen, and I loved Watchmen. I thought Watchmen was a masterpiece. My history with Watchmen goes way far back. Watchmen was the first R-rated movie that was ever reviewed at my high school, and I was the person to review it. I had to get permission from the principal, and all that. But yeah, I was able to review Watchmen for the school newspaper
That
because I love
film's
the story. I love the comics.
Yeah, it's
You
that
know,
film's most distinguishing characteristic is that it was the first R-rated movie reviewed by a high school newspaper.
I mean, I'm proud of it. I loved Watchmen though.
No,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
a lot of people say it's a bastardized, version of the novel, but I disagree. I think that it's a work with the novel, and yeah, I love the film, and I really like Zack Snyder. Even Batman versus Superman, I didn't think it was that good of a movie, but technically the film is impressive to me. And
Yeah,
I mean,
and
go
this
ahead.
is kind of why I want to talk about the movie too, is because there is a lot of hate directed towards Zack Snyder. And I, for a while, I've been a defender of his,
Right.
and I kind of, well, I agree with you. I loved Watchmen as well. I think that's a
Did
great
you? I
movie.
don't remember you liking Watchmen.
No, we
I
watched
don't
it
remember you
together.
disliking it. I just don't remember you liking it.
No, I
I
love
could be
that
just
movie.
misremembering. It's pretty fucking common, but
Yeah, no, yeah, you were a big fan of that movie, and
yeah.
I missed it in theaters. And
Oh
you,
God, that's the only way to see that damn movie, man. I think it was shot on film.
yeah, Zack Snyder, he shoots everything on film.
Oh God, yeah. And that's the thing. I really like Zack Snyder, and I never
Yeah, yeah.
watched this. I heard it wasn't very good, and I was like, oh man, I'm probably gonna fucking love it then. Um, but boy, I didn't really like this one,
Yeah,
and I don't know whose fault it is. It's kind of hard for me to put my finger on like one big thing I didn't like, but I guess mainly it was just I felt uncomfortable through a lot of the film.
yeah, this is one I think. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about in it
Yeah.
because you're right. It is a movie that has a lot going for it. It has
Yes.
its strengths, but
Yes.
it has its flaws too. It has a lot of flaws, and it's an interesting experience watching it. And I think it's one worth talking about. It's one I wanted to talk about, and I also just wanted to talk about Zack Snyder. Like, before we go into really Sucker Punch specifically, like I just wanted to say, like, I am a fan of Zack Snyder. I wasn't to begin with. I remember when 300 came out.
Yeah.
That was a big movie. That was the film that really put him on the map. He done, I believe, like commercials and music videos and stuff before that. As many,
Did he direct Dawn of the Dead?
yes, the remake in,
Wow, I didn't know that. I just pulled up his IMDb real fast. I just wanted to make sure I was.
yeah, no, I think it was 2004, the
He
remake of,
directed a movie called Legend of the Guardians: The Owls of Ga'Hoole.
yeah, that was a digital animated film
Did you
about
watch it?
owls. I've never seen it. No, I
What the
always forget he
fuck?
did that one. Can't comment upon that one. But yeah, I think it was in 2004 he directed the remake of Dawn of the Dead,
Yeah, it's 2004.
which as far as remakes of classic horror films go, that's not a bad one. I think his remake of
Yeah,
Dawn
Dawn
of
of
the
the Dead's
Dead,
cool.
yeah, is an entertaining film. Not as good as the Romero film, but still a pretty fun, entertaining, and exciting zombie film, I
Is Ving
thought.
Rhames in that movie?
Yes, he is.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, then I'm remembering the right one. So dude, I don't know if it's my old age or all the drugs I take, but every zombie movie ever is just like one lump of a film in my memory. Like I have a really hard time like remembering, especially the Romero films, which I know is gonna get me fucking crucified. But like they all just kind of get lumped in with like one movie. It's hard for me to kind of decipher them out. Like Dawn of the Dead, Day of the like Land of the Dead. I mean Night of the Living Dead. Like I get them all kind of mixed up. Even non Romero zombie films like Zombieland and stuff like. I have a hard time like remembering
Yeah.
like really distinct scenes and stuff from those films. I don't know why.
I've never gotten them confused. I guess maybe other zombie stuff tends to feel pretty generic to me,
Yeah.
but certainly the Romero stuff really stands out to me. And Snyder's Dawn of the Dead has always been one that's stuck out in my memory as a
Right.
pretty well made, very action oriented zombie movie. Well done, I thought.
Yeah.
And then it was his
From what I
second
can remember.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen it. Yeah, admittedly. But then 300 was his second movie, an adaptation of the Frank Miller graphic novel, a sleeper hit, huge movie. Nobody was really expecting it to be as big as it was. I remember I was in high school when it came out, and it was a movie that everyone was talking about.
Yeah.
So I have to say, initially, my first experience with Zack Snyder, like really knowing his name and who he was sort of negative, because I sort of have like this reflexive, like contrarian attitude. Like whenever there's a movie that's really big or really popular, I tend to kind of, I can't help it. I tend to just be like, I don't want to see that
So
movie.
you have no interest in seeing it?
Well, I mean, I do. I probably will see it at some point. It's less potent now than it was when I was in high school. I think I was really arrogant in high school, especially about movies.
You were kind of a snob, if I remember.
Yeah, I was. I have to admit. So yeah, 300
but
was
it's
kind of
okay.
like.
I mean, look at what you're doing now. You know, it's like, I think that if you would have seen Sucker Punch when you were in high school, you would have. I think you would have torn it apart. Honestly,
Probably, yeah. Yeah, so I kind of when Zack Snyder was really was really becoming a new popular filmmaker, and 300, whatever you think of it, I've seen it subsequently. It was a movie that like I refused to see for many years until I think it was you again. You were saying like we should watch 300, and I finally sat down and watched it years and years later after I was kind of getting over that snobby attitude of mine.
Right.
And you know, it's not a bad movie. It's a fun movie.
I have fond memories of 300. I went and saw the movie. When did it come out? 2008.
I'm not sure. Probably somewhere around there. 2006,
I saw that movie on Easter Sunday of whatever year it came out, and I had fun with it. I enjoyed myself. I'd never seen anything. Granted, this was like over 10 years ago, but I'd never seen anything like it.
No, yeah, that's the reason it was so big.
Right.
Like,
I mean, I really liked it. It just reminded me of seeing like a giant video game on screen, but with titties and stuff in it, and I thought that was really dope. But like, yeah, how like, you know, King Leonidas would cut some dude's head off, then all the blood would like not land on the ground and just like disappear and stuff. Like,
yeah,
that reminded me of like a big video game. But the story. The story of 300, I mean, like the idea of Spartans and shit is cool.
It's pretty
like,
simple, pretty
it's
straightforward.
very simple, but I mean, I don't know, like there's some flat out melodrama in that movie that kind of irritates me, but just I have fond memories of 300. I mean, honestly though, I think one thing that really kind of turns me off on it is like I think that movie was the dawn of like the dude bro era.
I think it was a movie that had a big impact, whether you love it or hate it.
Boys and like dude bro culture that I'm not really into. Even though I say dude and bro more than I say like hi, how are you? But
but it also was a movie that had a big impact on the industry too.
Yeah, because absolutely.
It was made relatively cheaply. It was R-rated. It was bloody and action heavy.
Had titties.
Yeah, very stylized, shot almost entirely in front of a green screen. Really heavily, I guess, what would be the right word? But the post-production process was very complicated, creating the cinematography, you know, in computers.
Yeah. I mean, like the film might as well have been shot on an iPhone because with all the post-production, I mean, I guarantee it, whatever they filmed, whatever those dailies look like are nothing even remotely fucking close to the final product that we see.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that film was molested with post-production. I mean,
but I think it was also showing like the possibilities of that kind of technology, like how different, because that movie stood out. It really looked like nothing else.
Right.
And that I think really showed a lot of filmmakers.
I think that film has more in common with the first 15 minutes of Wizard of Oz than any other movie, you know, kind of in the what something happened?
Yeah, someone's knocking at my window, sorry.
Ooh.
My mom.
Oh, okay, then she's cool.
Yeah.
I was
sorry.
Gonna say, tell whoever it is to fuck off. But no, your mom's tight. I love your mom. If you see her, tell her I said hello.
Okay.
But yeah, anywho, I think like honestly, oddly enough, it's like the first 10 minutes of Wizard of Oz that reminded me of like 300. Just like that. Think? What is that color scheme called? Like when it's not necessarily black and white.
Sepia toned, where it's kind of brownish.
It's called bronzed, yeah.
Yeah, bronze
spray tan on it, you know.
Yeah, that's appropriate for 300. Bronze.
Yeah, I don't know, bronze. You know those bronze films that came out back in the. No, fuck, I don't know what I'm talking about, but yeah, I like 300. So cheers to 300.
Yeah. Also, the speed ramping is probably the most iconic thing from 300 that
Is that
became.
where he jumps in the air and like?
It's where the speed changes in shot. It's where you go from regular motion and then you ramp it down to slow motion and then you speed it up, you ramp it back up, and then you ramp it back down, all without
Oh,
cutting.
okay.
Speed ramping all within a
Yeah, yeah,
shot.
yeah. He would like he'd be running, then he'd jump, and like I
Yes,
like
and then it goes
Snyder.
slow.
I remember that shit. Speed ramping, huh?
Yeah, it was
Them
like
big boys, they're speed ramping again.
it was like bullet time in the wake of the Matrix, and it was like
Oh God, bullet time.
every movie
God.
had to do bullet time. After
Yeah,
300, every movie had to do speed ramping. So I mean,
right,
it was a movie that made an impact and that had an influence that
right.
could be felt. Whether you love or hate that movie, it had an impact. And he followed that up with Watchmen, again, a movie that divided people, but it was kind of like I feel like Watchmen does have its passionate defenders, you and
Oh
I
man,
among them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Watchmen, I thought was spec fucking tacular.
Yeah, I'm
That
sure.
came out in 2009. That Watchmen flick.
Yeah, and it had a very long and troubled production history prior to that. And I'm sure in a later episode we'll be covering Watchmen because there's so much to say just about that film on its
Oh yeah,
own.
I mean, I wouldn't mind picking that movie. I mean, when I watched it in high school, I wrote an essay on it. I mean, like a 10
Oh yeah.
page like research paper on it. I what I tied Watchmen to was like I wrote a metaphor paper about how that film is a reflection of like the American dream and political
Oh yeah.
turmoil. And yeah, I'm pretty sure I got a D on it, but I mean, it was a passion project.
No, yeah. And then Sucker Punch was his follow up to Watchmen. This is where I feel like things started to turn negative for Zack Snyder. This was the one where the reaction was pretty universally negative.
Yeah, I don't think so many people critically like acclaim this film.
No, I don't think so. And it didn't really do well at the box office. It was sort of it was a big where his career had been just, steadily gaining momentum. Sucker Punch was kind of the bit where it dipped down.
Right.
And subsequent to Sucker Punch, he's become like the major helmsman of the DC Universe films.
Right.
So he's sort of come back with that, like Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, huge movies, gigantic budgets. They made a ton of money at the box office. Again, divided critics, divided fans, especially. I feel like now, especially post Batman versus Superman, just about everything you hear about Zack Snyder is very negative. Just saying how the guy's a hack. He has no talent. What is he doing? Directing these huge movies. Get rid of him. And I find myself more and more, especially since the discussion is starting to skew so negative, I find myself defending him more and more. And I'm not even really a fan. I didn't see Batman versus Superman, so I can't I can't comment
to watch.
Yeah, I can't comment upon that movie. I did see Man of Steel. Wasn't a big fan. But I will say, for all of Zack Snyder's work, and there's movies of his I like Watchmen, Dawn of the Dead. There's movies of his I'm not such a fan of, like 300 or Man of Steel.
Like 300.
I don't think it's a bad movie, but it's not one I'm especially like. It's not a movie I'm going to go out and watch. It's
so if I came over to your house right now and I knocked on your door and I'm like, "Hey, I'm in the mood to watch 300. I got a 6-pack of beer. What do you say?"
I might do it under those circumstances,
okay.
But
good to know.
It's not one like I was especially enthusiastic about, though.
Right.
And then there's Sucker Punch, but to me, this is kind of like epitomizing what Zack Snyder's work is like for me, because for whatever I would criticize about his movies, there are also many things that I would praise. He has his own distinct style. He has a vision for everything he does, and he's tremendously ambitious.
Yeah.
Some would say overly ambitious. Yeah. With every project. I think Sucker Punch is really a prime example of that. This is a movie that is jam-packed with ideas, that tries to do so many different things.
Right.
I think fails in a lot of ways, but still it's a tremendously interesting movie to me for what it's trying to do, because it's an original idea. It's like no other movie really out there, it's kind of fascinating to watch this thing and to see like what Snyder was trying to do with it, and the ways, you know, he succeeded and the ways he kind of fell short a little bit.
Right.
And I don't know if this movie's really developing a cult following or what, but the I had heard of it. I'd never seen it. Funnily enough, the thing that really convinced me to watch it is I started listening to that podcast, How Did This Get Made?
Right.
Which is a comedy podcast all about, you know, making fun of terrible movies. And they did an episode on this movie. I listened to it. I thought it was funny, but also I was kind of like, I kind of want to see that movie now. It sounds fascinating to me. And so I wound up tracking it down, and that's what inspired the show. And now we're here doing the episode. Cool. But what's that?
I said, cool.
So I guess now that we're really getting into the film,
yeah, you have some fucking explaining to do, bro.
Okay. I'll defend myself on this one.
First? Do you want me to tell you my critiques with it, and then maybe you defend, or what do you want? How do you want to do this?
Well, first off, let's try and do a plot synopsis, which is not easy with this movie.
Right. Okay. All right. So,
as has been pointed out, many have defined this film as incomprehensible. Which
I wouldn't say it's incomprehensible. I mean, I don't know. Essentially, but I couldn't tell you what it was about.
Yeah, a lot of people had difficulty with it, which I did too.
I feel like I know what it's about. I feel like I know what it was going for. I just don't feel like it just did it very well.
Well, I've seen it twice now. I've seen the theatrical version, and I got to see the extended version.
Right.
So, and watching it the second time is a big help in being able to understand exactly what is happening.
Right.
But basically, this movie, all right, I need to find like a starting place here because there are multiple layers to it. It's fantasies within fantasies in this movie.
Yeah.
But basically, at the beginning, our main character is introduced, Baby Doll.
That's her name.
Yes, Baby Doll. Yeah, that is the name.
It's one of my problems with the film.
Okay. But yes, as the movie opens, we see Baby Doll Baby Doll we see it through a prologue, which is done completely visually with no dialogue. There's just music and images, which I think is a pretty strong sequence. No? Didn't do it for you?
I could have watched this movie on mute, and it probably would have been like 27% better.
You think?
Yeah, it's the soundtrack for me was really distracting.
Okay, yeah, soundtrack. I don't know. Yeah, some of the song choices. Okay,
it wasn't the song choices; it was how the songs were performed.
Oh, like the covers?
Yeah, because it's like this movie inspired the making of every fucking trailer I've seen in the last 4 years of taking a very famous 80s song, slowing it down, and just having a female vocalist cover it.
Okay, you do have a point there, yeah.
Fuck, dude. Like, every movie trailer nowadays, like, I just saw one for, I think it was Power Rangers. I mean, that's not a brand new movie, but, like, yeah, they did Bad Moon Rising by Creedence Clearwater. I mean, it's like, and that would have fit very well in this film. They do Search and Destroy by Iggy and the Stooges.
Mm-hmm.
They do,
Where's My Mind?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. They do what's that stupid one, that Alice in Wonderland like trippy song that our parents did acid to?
White Rabbit.
Yeah, White Rabbit. I mean, like, it's just like, but there's these really slowed down versions that have these mediocre sounding kind of female vocalist covers, and it's like it's just more distracting to me because I don't like to compare movies to other movies. I really don't like doing that. I think it's cheap. I think it's a really bad way to review a film. But like when I think of Watchmen, like it used the original songs and it used them so fucking well. Like that opening sequence using The Times Are Changing by Bob Dylan against that imagery that almost looks like a wax museum, the way it's filmed, like with how he does that, what'd you call it? Speed ramping?
I think it's all slow motion in the prologue
like
to Watchmen.
Like it's but it's like the way it's done is like some things are fast. Like I'm thinking of like when there's a guy who shoots a gun, but the flash happens real fast, but the bullet comes out of the gun really slow. It's like a miniature speed ramp of one single part of a frame. But like,
Oh
and I
yeah.
don't want to compare it to Watchmen. I think that's lazy reviewing, but it just a score and songs to movies are really crucial to me. A soundtrack is so important to me. It's one of the main things that kind of sucks me into a film. I love scores. I love soundtracks. This one just didn't do it for me, bro.
Okay. Okay. But I will say I think Snyder's visual skills are really on display here.
Yes, I would
Um,
agree with you fully there. I will give you that. The film's nice to look at. You know what I
yes.
mean?
And especially in the prologue, he's using
Yes,
no dialogue whatsoever. He's telling the story completely through imagery,
yes,
and I think doing a pretty good job setting up all the backstory, setting up the premise for the storyline, which is that our main character, Baby Doll, she is living with her stepfather. Her mother has recently died, leaving her stepfather in custody of her and her younger sister. He's abusive, and it's sort of hinted exactly how and what way, never really shown on screen, but he is abusive towards them. And one night, when he goes after her younger sister, she gets a hold of a pistol to try and protect her. And this is kind of done in an ambiguous way, which I think is on purpose. But she fires off a couple of shots in the process of trying to protect her little sister, and somehow, possibly, she accidentally kills her little sister, or maybe the stepfather kills the sister somehow. But the little sister ends up dead, and she's blamed for it. We're not really sure if she's actually responsible, but she's blamed for the death of her little sister, and taken to a mental hospital, an insane asylum. And she's committed there. And while there, she kind of starts to meet all the inmates and the guards, and the doctor that runs the place. And in the process, she starts to slip into fantasy to escape her harsh reality. This is just the first level of the movie, the what you might define as the reality of the movie. She is, stuck in this insane asylum. From there, she slips into a fantasy where she imagines the asylum as like this 1940s era, like glamorous brothel. And she and all of the other girls there are like dancers slash prostitutes. And she starts imagining that she and the other girls can escape from this brothel and escape from, the abusive guy who runs the brothel, played by Oscar Isaac. His name is Blue, who is also seen as one of the orderlies, an abusive orderly in the asylum. He takes on this, other form of this guy who's secretly in charge of everything and who is kind of like the figure they have to escape. In the process of imagining this escape plan, while on this first layer of fantasy, she escapes into a third layer of fantasy, which are like these action power fantasies where she imagines herself and the other girls as like these invincible warriors that take on all these fantastic creatures and monsters that are meant to act as metaphors for their quests to get these 5 key items that will allow them to escape from the brothel and potentially in real life to escape from the asylum. That is basically, I think, the plot synopsis here. There's
what
3
you
levels.
just described is more enthralling than watching
You
the
think
film.
so?
Well, okay, you've done the plot synopsis. I'm
Yeah,
gonna need
I think
another Guinness, but
that's basically everything.
that's basically it. So, where do you want to start?
Well, I'm not sure. I guess first off, I don't know why the movie needs to be this complicated. That was certainly, after watching it the first time, um I'll say I didn't find all 3 layers to be, as engaging. I didn't find them all to be equally engaging. Some more engaging than others.
It
I
was
think
it was the first 2 levels of fantasy that I wasn't interested in. When they were blowing
first
shit
2.
up and fighting gigantic monsters and hundreds of Nazis and dragons and all that, I was like, okay, I didn't watch this. But
Okay,
like,
yeah. I'm glad you agree with me on that because I think the action sequences were the things that were most heavily criticized about this movie.
I liked him. I mean,
Yeah, they were actually my
it
favorite part as
felt it
well.
felt like a comic book movie. This isn't
Yes.
based on anything, right?
No, it isn't.
It's
It
an
is
original
it's an original
screenplay.
screenplay.
I
Yeah.
mean, those are the ones that felt those ones. I hate that word ones. Those scenes felt the most like Zack Snyder doing what Zack Snyder does best, which I mean, I'm not trying to minimalize him or compartmentalize his skill set, but he does action very fucking well. You know what I
Yes.
mean? His action scenes are well choreographed. They're usually creative with setting, costume, style. I mean, they're cool, and that's what I like about this flick is that the action scenes are done well. You know, these
Yeah, and they're
gigantic
crazy.
fucking samurai monsters and
Yes.
these dragons and these Nazi zombies. Like it's cool. I think that shit's dope. But
Yeah, I would agree with you.
it's the problem is though is it's just like I'm trying to be very kind. It's
okay.
it's it's frustrating to me because like I'm gonna do something I really hate doing, but like for example, I love John Wick. I love those movies. I'm a huge fanatic of them. I mean, like, yeah, I can watch, 400 Blows and I can watch, whatever art house fucking Frenchy, engaging film you want me to watch. I can do that and I can do it well and I can appreciate film. I pride myself on that. But there's a piece of this steak in my chest, like this heart I have. I just vision it being a steak.
Yeah.
It's it yearns for like stupid shit, and John Wick is like one of the prime examples of a big ass action movie that's done so fucking well that it makes my heart feel full. It's not even that stupid. I mean, it's pretty stupid, but it's like it's still done very well. It's stylized. I like the characters. I like the settings. Go to Point Break. Point Break, probably one of the cheesiest action movies of all time. I love that movie. If you notice the theme, Keanu Reeves is in both of them, but that's besides the point. But I mean, like, there's action movies that just work for me, like The Equalizer. I also thought The Equalizer was very good. Terminator 2, Terminator 1, the Rocky films. I mean, like, there's just these action movies that speak to me. Sucker Punch, to me, doesn't have convincing enough characters to make up for the nearly 2-hour runtime and to really make the action anything I care about. It's like watching WWF wrestling. I don't really care about the characters, but it's fun to watch gigantic men and gigantic women throw their bodies around steel cages and hit each other with chairs. And that's what I was getting from Sucker Punch. The action was cool to watch because how often do you see 5 little hot chicks blowing shit up and, making a big fucking mess out of everything? I mean, that on a base level is satisfying to me. I felt a little uncomfortable sometimes. Like I have a hard time. I don't know, like my idea of sexuality in films and enjoyable sexuality in films isn't as simple as just like, oh, look at the hot schoolgirl. Like that to me makes me feel a little cheap, makes me feel a little dirty. Like that's something like my dad would like or my grandpa would be into. But I mean, like the idea of like something that's very sexy to me in films and I feel comfortable with is like Jamie Lee Curtis's Striptease in True Lies, another big stupid action movie that conveys sexuality and the sexuality that the sexuality can empower characters. I feel like this film tries to have these chicks, be really, really sexy and how that empowers them and how it helps them distract from the reality. But it's done in a way to me that feels kind of cheap. It feels like this is what I'm not trying to hurt anyone's feelings, but like somebody who lives and dies on Xbox 360, Call of Duty, like this is their idea of sexuality. This is their idea of what a woman should look like or how women should look like. So that was one aspect of this film that was kind of uncomfortable to me was,
it is kind of an adolescent fantasy. Yeah,
it is kind of and I understand that with comic books. I understand that's the approach he's going, but Zack Snyder is fucking better than that because in Watchmen, what's her name? The Silk Spectre? No, that's not her name. Yeah, is the Silk Spectre?
I think that's right. Yeah, Silk Spectre.
Like the way they show her sexuality and then her mother, how her mother kind of loses that, as she gets into old age, and how like without her sexuality she feels powerless. Like Zack Snyder's done it really well. I mean, of course, that was adapted from Alan Moore, in his brilliant writing, I mean, like, Alan Moore is a fucking genius. But I mean, like, still, Zack Snyder can convey that, and he did it 2 years earlier, you know what I mean, than Sucker Punch. So that was one thing that, when I said this film has a lot of potential, Zack Snyder is better than this movie. He's smarter than this movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry, I just kind of went on a tyrant there, but
No, it's good.
A tirade. Sorry.
Yeah.
It just, the thing that's frustrating is I wanted to like this movie. I really like Zack Snyder. I like his style. Yeah, I know he doesn't make the greatest movies on the planet. I don't go into these movies thinking they're gonna be the greatest movies on the planet. I go to be entertained. I go to think a little bit, and I go to just watch crazy shit happen. And the problem for this film is I just feel like none of the characters speak to me. Oscar Isaac, I think the dude's a great actor. I really like him a lot, but like, I don't know, this movie, I just feel like he's just like, he's like this can. Like, imagine this can's talking to you, and it's just like, bah, bah, bah. Like,
nothing really going on.
Nothing really going on. I don't know. Maybe you're seeing it a different way, but the thing is, I went into this movie with a very open mind, a very open heart. I heard it wasn't very good, but I didn't really give it much attention. I didn't really say, "Oh, I'm probably not going to like this because it's only at 9% or whatever it's at Rotten Tomatoes." Like, I just went into it open-minded. I put it on after work and had a Guinness and I smoked a joint. I'm like, let's watch this. Let's get into this. And even stoned, I couldn't get into this, which is very rare for me because I watch a lot of films stoned and I usually cry at the end of them because it's like, oh my God, like, I can't believe how deep John Wick is. Like, he wants his dog. Like, this film, I was just kind of like, fuck. I don't know what's going on here, but it's just not clicking for me. It's not working fast enough. It's not working hard enough.
And a lot of your criticisms, I do agree with. I think.
Do you feel like I was irrational, or do you think any of my points are ill-conceived?
No, not at all.
Okay.
If this is how you reacted to the movie, that's how you reacted. And I did react kind of in a similar way, especially the first time. It's like a movie that seems to be trying to do two things at once. It's trying to be like sort of an action fantasy, like an empowerment kind of film,
right? About
young women who can kick ass and fight monsters and do all kinds of just incredible feats. Yeah, and just really express their power and their dominance, but at the same time, it's also trying to be a movie that is tackling all of these deep themes about mental illness and about abuse and sexual abuse and the I guess the abuse of women, the objectification of women.
Yes,
it's trying to do these two things simultaneously, and they don't really mesh together so well.
It's almost as if Zack Snyder didn't talk to any women about how they feel. Like,
yes.
I think
he just kind of had his own ideas, which were kind of coming from the place of a 13-year-old comic book fan.
Yes,
like, let's do that.
This movie should be called Sucker Punch: Mansplaining Sexuality. I mean, that's what it feels like. It feels very mansplaining, which I hate that term. I really do, but I'm starting to get it. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels like his logic is, he means well. I mean, he's trying to have a statement about sexuality.
That's the thing. That is
well. He's not trying to be exploitative or cheap or offensive. He's trying to say something. But
that's again coming to the thing that I appreciate about Zack Snyder. He's got ambition. He's got things he's trying to convey and things he's trying to do.
I almost feel like, though, that all he had to do was ask his wife, like, "Hey, honey, am I hitting the nail on the head here? Like, this captures your feelings, right? Like, I'm sure she's like, yeah, it's great. Can I have $100K? I want to go buy a new thing." But it's like I just feel like he just kind of missed the mark because I'm a guy and I'm a stupid one at that. I'm a stupid guy, and I was kind of like, this is kind of dumb the way this is kind of working right now. Like, I mean, all he had to do was talk to someone, like, and ask somebody, you know, if you're trying to have a message, trying to send a message, trying to empower, especially young women, an entire part of the species of humans that doesn't really get a lot of respect, especially on cinema and television and media. You know, it's always like, you got to look pretty and you got to be stupid and curl your hair, and, you know, you got to get with a rich guy, and that's how you're going to be, you know, successful. I think that's a very common stereotype, especially with young women in modern day media. And I feel like he had a platform here. I mean, it's not very often you get strong female characters. And a big part of weak female characters is not understanding women, you know, not understanding the voice of women, the power of women, not giving women control. And I feel like this was a film where he didn't really give the women any control. He didn't really try to reach out and really try to make sure that his message was coming across and his message was empowering. And like I said, I'm a stupid guy. I love tits and porn. I'm an idiot. Like, but I mean, I get it though. I mean, I get the empowerment of it. I get that if you're going to try to have a message, you should try to talk to some people and make sure that, hey, does this make sense? Like, just his script alone, just a script, you know, just saying like, hey, do you feel like this dialogue, do you feel like this setting, do you think this is working? And I bet if anyone could really be honest with Zack Snyder, they would have told him, hey, no, not at all.
That maybe is part of it, because this movie did come after a string of hits, a string of successes. Yes. I feel like this is an example of a movie, and apparently it was one that he'd had the idea for a while. Like, I think it was in my notes here, I think it was 2007 is what I discovered, is where he first started working on the idea, but he put it aside so that he could focus on doing Watchmen. And so I think after so I think after doing 300, which was a big success, Watchmen, which was a big
300 had a strong female lead in it. That Egyptian dude with the piercings,
the Persian guy, yeah.
I mean, but Leonidas' wife, she's played by the she's the same actress who's in Game of Thrones. She plays
Lena Headey or Headey.
Oh god, she's like bro. Yeah, I'm very much I have a pretty huge crush on her. She was a good character. She was really good in 300. I mean, like, she was a strong lady, wasn't she?
I mean, I guess so. It's just kind of like the wife character, though. That's kind of like something I'm always.
I'm just trying to remember.
That was my reaction to it.
I remember she was like in a court with all these dudes, and these dudes were like, "Hey, fuck," and she was like, "No, don't say that." And then like she was really strong.
It's been a while since I've seen it, so maybe you're right. I don't know.
I'm probably way the fuck off, but whatever.
But this was an idea that he had a while back, and he decided he was going to do Watchmen first.
Yes.
Which was, again, a successful movie, especially for an R-rated movie. An R-rated,
yeah. Because, I mean, Dark Knight came out the year before, and I mean, that was PG-13. Yeah. And, yeah, fuck. It's so like a non-franchise film that is kind of, it's not Batman, it's not Superman, it's kind of something, I guess, a little more obscure. It's not, I wouldn't exactly call it obscure, but for a mainstream audience, Watchmen's a pretty obscure title. But I mean,
and the movie did really well. Like,
I don't remember how it did. I remember it being very divisive. I gave it a great review. I think I gave it 4 out of 4.
It was divisive, but I mean, it did well. It made money. Right. And I feel like Snyder was in a position where people were just kind of like, all right, I mean, like, you clearly, like, you know what to do. Like, we're just going to let you do. Yeah.
There's money. Like,
so I think, that's probably what Sucker Punch was. It was just kind of a situation, which happens every now and again. And I feel like it happens less now, which is kind of another thing I appreciate about Sucker Punch, is that it probably was one of the last times something like this will happen, where a director has proven himself, like with non-franchise films, with R-rated films, like doing really daring, risky stuff, of having a studio basically just say to him, like, we're just going to let you do your thing. Like, you clearly know what you're doing. Like, we're just going to give you money and let you go. And you end up with something like this, which is a movie that just, it tries to cram so many ideas into one place.
And that doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me that it tried to be ambitious. I love it when a film is ambitious and it fails. If it fails for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And ambition doesn't scare me, especially as a moviegoer. I like sometimes ask myself, what the fuck just happened? Like, I just saw Mother 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It was an incredibly ambitious film, and maybe for some people too ambitious, too much going on, too many ideas, too much ideology, too much imagery, too much this, too much that, but not enough Jennifer Lawrence hot bod. Oh my god, dude. Anyway, I loved it. I thought Mother was great, and yeah, it's overwhelming. And yeah, in my review of it, I said like physically I wanted to tap out. I was done. I was spent by the end of that movie. I don't even think it was 2 hours, or it might have just been 2 hours. But
yeah,
I
think so.
I mean, it was one of the few times in my life where I was like, fuck, I need to get out of this theater. Like, I need to like smoke a cigarette. I need to like take a lap. I need to do something. Like, I just need a breath of fresh air. But it was done so well. And like with this movie, I wanted to tap out, but it was more of just like, I just don't care how this ends. I'm just not, I don't feel attached to any of these characters. I'm not really sucked into this world, you know?
It's too long.
Yeah, it's too long by about, I'd say a solid 20 minutes.
Yeah, it really does. I agree with you.
And there's an extended cut.
There is, yeah, which is,
God.
It's not that much longer. It's only about 15, 20 minutes longer, which I guess is something, but
I mean, that's kind of long. Oh, my camera went out of focus because I moved fast. Come on, camera. There we go.
But I think I like this movie a little bit more than you do.
It hit me with it. I'm going to relax for a second. I just want to hear, lay it on me. What do you love about it? What sells it? I mean, I'm not saying that you love this movie, but make a movie Monday picks. Well, we had The Cell, we had Ravenous, we had Place Beyond the Pines. Why do you think Sucker Punch belongs in this tier of films?
Well, because there are things in it that do fascinate me, and there are things in it that did kind of obsess me, and that made me imagine a movie that I think could have been a lot better than this. Which is kind of what makes it worth discussing to me, is that it is an ambitious failure, and the ambition in there is I think really interesting. I think Zack Snyder originally described like the pitch behind the movie, the idea behind it is he wanted it to be like Alice in Wonderland with machine guns. And I think that's a great idea, because I love Alice in Wonderland. I love that story, the original Lewis Carroll stories. That's some of my favorite books. There have been many different, adaptations, reinterpretations, cinematic tellings of the Alice in Wonderland story. I've loved just about all of them. Like the Disney Alice in Wonderland, Coraline, even the Matrix.
Have you seen the new Alice in Wonderland?
Yeah, the Tim Burton. Yeah, I have seen that one.
You like it?
I thought it was okay. Not the best version of the story. You haven't seen it?
No, I've seen parts of the first one. All I remember is Helena Bonham Carter screams a lot.
And she has a giant head. Yeah. It's a weird movie.
Big-ass head.
Yeah. Not
Did that kill her? What has she done since then?
Lone Ranger. That might have killed her.
That doesn't count.
But
she wasn't Lone Ranger. I haven't seen that either. I'm not really a big Disney guy.
Yeah, well, that's okay.
Beauty and the Beast, though, that's my shit. Goofy movie, that's my shit. Everything
original
else,
Beauty and the Beast, though, right? Animated one, right?
Yeah, whatever year that came out in.
Yeah, because there's a new live action one now.
Oh yeah, with Hermione Granger.
Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, the Tim Burton version, not the best version of the Alice in Wonderland story, but still,
Johnny Depp looks cool in that movie. I'll give it that.
Yeah, there's things about it that I
costume.
Yeah, there are things about it that I do kind of like. And Coraline. Did I say? I think I said Coraline. But also The Matrix, very heavily influenced by Alice in Wonderland, which is a thing I like about it.
Oh yeah, follow the White Rabbit, Neo.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on.
And I think if Sucker Punch had stuck more closely to that,
in what way? What do you mean stuck more closely to that?
I think if it had just actually been, because I think another thing that Zack Snyder talked about when he really started developing the idea is he wanted it to be like the female version of 300. He wanted it to be like this big, crazy, nonstop action movie that was female-driven instead of male-driven, which that is what I really want it to be. I want it to be like this crazy, wild, Alice in Wonderland, female-driven action movie. And it's just not quite that. There's all these other things in there that I feel like are undermining that. Like you said, like the things that you thought were the coolest were the action scenes. And they're wild. They're crazy action scenes. Every single one has some just ridiculous concept behind it. It's these beautiful young actresses, you know, in revealing outfits, which it comes with its own problems. But they're fighting like giant suits of samurai armor, which kind of reminded me of like Terry Gilliam's Brazil, which is again with like the whole thing of using fantasy to escape reality. Fighting samurai that when you wound them, they like bleed fire and light. That felt very Terry Gilliam-esque to me, which I liked. Steampunk zombies in the trenches of World War I, and giant zeppelins in the sky, and fighting orcs and dragons, like wild ideas. No two action sequences in this movie are alike. There's a lot of variety and just crazed ideas behind it, which I really enjoy. The final action sequence is a little disappointing. You know, it's just robots. Just kind of like, not as interesting.
Robots are the lamest.
Yeah, but again, Snyder tries something with that scene that really
sets Terminators.
Yeah, but Snyder tries something with that sequence where they're fighting the robots to make it more interesting. He shoots the whole action sequence in one single shot, or not really. He uses a lot of effects to blend many different elements, but this whole action sequence is done in this one shot that basically it's constantly speed ramping. The camera's doing all these impossible movements, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. And at a certain point, you get worn out, and it's like, when is this damn shot going to end? But again, I respect the ambition there. I admire the ambition that he's just like, no, let's push it further. Let's go further. And so I guess...
But at some point, it kind of feels like as an audience member, like when you're in good hands, like going back to Mother, I knew I was in good hands, and whatever Aronofsky was going to throw at me, I was ready for it. He prefaced it. He had me attached. He had me ready to roll. Was Zack Snyder in 300. That movie could have been an hour longer, and I wouldn't have minded. Zack Snyder in Watchmen. I felt like I was in good hands. Technically and figuratively, the movie captured me. I was invested in those flicks. And whatever Zack Snyder wanted to do in Watchmen, I would have been right there with him, supporting him. But in this film, I wasn't attached. At one point, it feels like he's dragging me through the movie rather than like holding my hand and walking with me or being like, hey, go explore, you know, this is my chocolate factory. Go get stuck in the Fudge River. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Go have some fun.
That's a good metaphor. He's dragging you through it. Yeah, it does feel like that at points. And I think it is because there's these two conflicting tones. There's this empowering fantasy that is the really cool part of the movie that I enjoy. But then there's the other layers, the upper layers above all of that.
It's almost as if the action sequences are the safety net, and the other two plot devices are kind of like acrobats trying to get our attention, trying to do flips and somersaults and catch themselves. And when that fails, bam, we go to crazy ass action sequences. That's how I feel. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that. I feel like the thing that is really trying to be the eye-catching thing are the action sequences.
Well, I'm talking about how I viewed it.
Oh, okay.
I don't think he set it up that way. I'm sorry if I misspoke there. But to me, it felt like that. It felt like the action sequences were very much the safety net, and that's what made the film bearable. But the main parts that the most important parts to me, the action could be bad. That won't bother me. But if the characters are good, if the story is good, if the writing is good, fuck, dude. Those action sequences could just be them playing chess. And I'd be like, wow, man, this is some deep shit, Zack Snyder. Like, way to go. But it's like, if I'm not invested, it's really hard for me to find interest because I'm a very forgiving man. I'm very forgiving with films. I forgive a lot of flaws. If I see what a film is really trying to go for, I will be right there for it. Like next week's pick, I'm gonna have to do a lot of explaining.
That'll be an interesting one too. Yeah,
I'm not apologizing for it, and I'm not trying to do any disclaimers.
Nor should you.
I'm not going to. But I mean, I see what the film's going for. I see what it's doing wrong. But boy, I love it. I love it so much. It has me. And this film, I wanted to do that, but I couldn't find much redeeming or strong enough redeeming qualities that can make up for the nearly 2 hour run, or closer to 2 hours than not. And just trying to find investment here.
Yeah, that's the big thing, is that just there's Yeah, you're right. The characters just aren't quite there. And what I really wanted the movie to be, which is this crazy Alice in Wonderland style female empowerment action fantasy, it's undermined by the other two layers of the movie, which are about abuse, and emphasizes over and over again that these characters are not empowered heroes, they're victims. They're victims of these other abusive characters that bring them down and make them, on screen and emotionally make them helpless. And there's not really anything they can do. The ending, I think, tries to drive home this message of empowerment. But every time we go into one of those action sequences, I'm like, I want the movie just be this.
Right.
But they're all so detached from one another that I think really the only way Snyder could think of linking these just crazy ideas that he had was to just like, okay, we'll make that like a fantasy. We'll make it a metaphor. And then we'll try to have a more grounded, realistic story dealing with these very dark, controversial issues. And it's just like, I don't want that, though. That doesn't belong in this movie. That's a different movie entirely. It's like he's trying to be Alan Moore, blending these comic book elements and these really disturbing psychological elements, but he's not able to do it as skillfully as Alan Moore.
That's a very, very fair point. I mean, it's like I said in the very beginning of the stream, it's like what happens when a director has a bunch of ideas and a bunch of money and they just say go. It feels like half an effort,
I think he's trying, and I will say, viewing the movie the second time, the first time there were so many things in it that I was just like, I don't really like this, the abuse, the sexual abuse, the way, the girls are treated throughout the movie, and the way they're hyper-sexualized and objectified. It's like, God, I really don't feel okay about a lot of this.
Yeah.
Second time, I was able to step back a little bit and view it more objectively and realize, okay, the movie is carefully thought out. Everything gets set up, in the opening few minutes. And Snyder, he's precise. He has a vision. He's a very precise filmmaker. Every technique he uses it for a reason. He uses it for a purpose. Like, watching it again, I was astonished that, like, every essential element of the story is set up in those first few minutes. Like the 5 objects that the girls have to find later on in the layers of fantasy. It's all set up when you see Baby Doll entering the asylum. You see the map, you see the lighter, you see the key, everything. It's all very carefully set up. And it's like, okay, this is going to pay off. And observing that, I was kind of like, okay, he actually thought this through. He didn't just jump into this thing, with no plan. He actually thought it through very carefully. It's just conceptually, I feel like there are too many ideas here that just aren't really meant to go together, and you feel them like magnetically repelling one another.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
That's the thing that really
magnetic repulsion.
Yeah. But I mean, there are other little bits, like in my notes here, I wrote, like, I like how the movie begins like with a curtain rising, like a theatrical production. I like how the movie embraces, its ridiculousness and the artificiality and the stylization of it. There are many visual moments that I think are great. The cinematography by Zack Snyder's regular cinematographer, Larry Fong is his name, is gorgeous. Yeah. Every single layer of the movie, they give its own distinct look. Like, the reality in the asylum is drained of color. It's kind of like desaturated.
That's really cold.
Yeah. The second layer is very oversaturated and lush and very colorful warm, and warm. Yeah. And then every fantasy sequence has its own like stylized kind of color palette. They push it blue, they push it orange, they push it cyan. So, I mean, again, visually, it's a really gorgeous movie to look at. And there are shots in it that, like, I wrote down. It's like, wow, this is an amazing shot. There's one shot of the girls, like, when they're formulating their plan, like, they're realizing we can escape from here. What do we need to do that? That whole scene is done in one single shot. And it's amazing the way it's done, because the camera, it starts on one side of a mirror, and you think you're looking, yeah, like you think the camera is behind the girls looking directly into the mirror.
Right.
And I was looking at that for a while and I was like, where's the camera in the reflection? And then if you look carefully, you realize there's body doubles like back to the camera that are mimicking the movements of all the actresses. And then the camera actually moves through the mirror and goes into the reflection and shoots the girls there. And then when it turns back to the mirrors, they've like slid an actual mirror in there, so they're looking at their real reflections. It's all done in one unbroken shot. It's like, damn, that's some good direction. I just wish I was interested in what they're actually saying in the scene.
Yeah, I mean, because then it would have been too good. It would have been like next level shit. But like I said, technically, I like the film.
Yeah, just visually on a technical level.
Visually, you know, but it makes me feel like that's exactly what Zack Snyder doesn't want. He doesn't want us to take things at surface value. He doesn't want us just to see a pretty woman and just say, "Oh, well, she's just a pretty woman." No, I mean, but that's what this film is. It's just a pretty film, and it breaks my heart to say it, but it's like, I don't know. I'd watch it again, but I won't watch it again alone.
Yeah.
I'd have to watch it with you probably, or somebody who's going to give me a lot of money.
Yeah.
Or Zack Snyder. If Zack Snyder's watching this, bro, I love you. I respect you. This film's not good though.
Yeah, I would just say lighten up a little bit. I mean,
relax, Zack Snyder. I mean, I know his personal life like isn't going super good right now, but
yes, I don't want to get too deeply into that, but yeah, unfortunately,
we definitely shouldn't respect him and all that, but it just sucker punch. I wanted to like it. I really wanted to like it. I feel like this film was a sucker punch. After Watchmen, it's like, hey, do you want $10? Fuck yeah, thanks, man. That's awesome. Here you go. Whack. Like, it's like I just got sucker punched by sucker punch.
Wait, I didn't want that.
Yeah, I thought I wanted $10. Like, but I guess that's what we get for feeling entitled. But I don't know. It just And
that's
Batman
the real lesson
Superman
here.
is the same kind of thing. Like, it looks good. It's a good looking movie. And of course, like the Batman scenes are badass. Like, it's all Batman. The Superman scenes lose me, but I have a personal bias against Superman. That's not Zack Snyder's fault. I just feel like this needs more. Just give me something more. Like,
more real substance than
like that's what makes those Nolan flicks so good. Is like it's real, and but at the same time, like, I mean, you have to suspend a little belief, but I mean, like, it feels like a real world with real characters, and Gary Oldman is like a big propeller of that. I think Gary Oldman is the person that most people would relate to in those Batman flicks. You know, he's the most centered. You know.
Yeah, it's real human characters grounding the whole thing. Yeah,
I feel like in Sucker Punch didn't have those characters that stick out to me. Like, the only reason I remember their names is because they're so ridiculous.
Which again, like, you've got a cast of characters with names like Baby Doll, Sweet Pea, Rocket, Mr. Blue. It's like, lighten up a little bit and just do what you were going to do. Alice in Wonderland with machine guns. Just make it a fun, ridiculous movie with some dark elements to it, but just go for that. It doesn't really need all of those other attempts at like commenting on like abuse and objectification of women, and
you know, rather than trying to have rather than try to have there's a really good word I completely forgot how to use. Rather than try to have a narrative through social commentary, just show strong elements of the changes you want to see, or against the abuse that you're trying to make people aware of. I mean, you don't need to make it as point blank as he made it, and like he said, lighten up. You know what I mean? It's a movie, and if you want to have a good effective message, you have to have a good effective film, and it doesn't need to be so on the nose. Like, it doesn't need I think that was a big criticism of Free State of Jones. Is like how it was just so on the nose, like not very tactfully handled. It's just so in your face about it. Like, and that's kind of what this film is. It's in your face in a lot of ways, but it's not in your face like with any real credibility, with any real respect. It doesn't have any right to be in our face as much as it is.
Yeah, I guess just since it on the surface appears to be just like this ridiculous action fantasy. Yeah, all of those darker elements, just kind of, they just kind of like, they hit you in an unpleasant way. It's like, and it just feels like this doesn't really belong in this kind of movie.
I agree.
I will say though, I mean, the cast is committed. Even though, the characters.
mean, it's
What?
I don't think they have much of a choice. I mean,
Well, yeah, but that's what I respect about actors is like even in a thing like this, like they are giving it their all.
I
Like,
was really shocked that Oscar Isaac was in this. I was really shocked
yeah,
that he
this
was
was
in this.
before he really, burst out and became a really big actor. This was
Yeah,
kind of one of his earlier roles. But I mean, he's going for it. He's really trying to make this character as despicable and menacing as he possibly can. This guy that's just, controlling and exploiting all of these girls. Carlo Gugino as the doctor, who was also like the madame of the brothel in the second layer of the fantasy. She's really going for it. Carla Gugino is always great. All of the girls like Emily Browning, Jenna Malone, who was my favorite in the movie as Rocket. I thought she kind of brought a lot of swagger to her
I knew
performance that
you
I
were gonna like
enjoyed.
Rocket the most.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. I thought she was the best.
No, no, no. I didn't say that she was bad. I just said I thought I knew that you were gonna like her the most.
Oh,
I just
really?
I don't know. I had a feeling. I'm like, I bet this chick does it for Tyler. Like,
Well, it wasn't even that. I just thought she was
no, I
really
didn't.
good.
I know. I said it in a base as kind of a joke, but I mean, I just for some reason I was just like out of your screenplays and stuff I've read and just kind of knowing you, I just kind of feel like Rocket was kind of up your alley.
Yeah, I gotcha. But like Vanessa Hudgens, Abby Cornish, I thought they were all great, and Scott Glenn for some reason, being in this movie as like the guide
What
through
was
all
he
of the
doing?
fantasy sequences. Even he was
One
great
more
too.
thing.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
his recurring line. One more thing.
Yeah.
They're all really going for it and really committed to the movie and really committed to the idea and the characters. They are, and there are certain scenes where it almost works. It
Yeah.
almost does
I'll give
because
you
they're all
that.
trying so hard to sell it, but just not quite. It's so sad to
Yeah,
see.
it misses the target. It comes close. I mean, it's almost a good movie. um
Yeah, I feel like there is a good movie somewhere in here. If you could just rejuggle the elements in some way, reconceptualize it, keep like all the visual elements basically the same, but yeah, just try and come at it from a different angle, maybe. I'm not sure, but I do honestly believe there's something in here. There's a good movie, there's a good idea in here trying to come out, and I think that's what really drew me to the film and made me want to discuss it. Is there's I feel like, because I do believe Zack Snyder's a very talented filmmaker. You got a great cast here, and yeah, a lot of really wild ideas that are fun, but yeah, just it doesn't quite all mesh, unfortunately. And I'm looking in here to see if there's anything I missed in my notes. Yeah, that's about it. I guess that's basically everything I had to say. Other than, just like some technical stuff, which I always love, like
yeah.
figuring out how they did the movie. But I don't know if it probably would be kind of redundant at this point now that we've kind of gotten everything out of the way.
I mean, I don't know. It's you can do it. I mean, we got nothing to lose but time. I mean,
I guess well, I mean, it was shot on film, which is the cool thing about Zack Snyder is
yes.
that he is totally committed to good old fashioned celluloid. Shoots all of his movies on film, which I think is cool, and I love that about Sucker Punch too. That it's got the grain, the film grain, the texture on there. There is a theatrical cut and an extended cut. They're both basically the same. The only differences I noticed in the extended cut were just simply a musical sequence, which you see over the end credits in the theatrical cut. That musical sequence is actually in the movie as a full musical sequence, which I did enjoy. Again, like lighten it up a little bit, like try to be a little wild and crazy. Like the movie could be fun. It could be good like that, like a musical, but just, yeah, he's got to bring in all those other dark elements to kind of drag it down,
Right.
unfortunately. And then the only other thing that I noticed was a scene with John Hamm. There's like a major scene
Oh
with
yeah,
John.
yeah, yeah. He has like one line of dialogue in the movie.
Yeah, he actually has like a major scene towards the end of the movie in the extended cut, which I thought was totally unnecessary. Didn't need to be there. Theatrical cut, yeah, I think is the better version here. Yeah,
So
I
I didn't
thought,
really miss much then.
yeah, I don't think so. I think it's shorter, but also I just think, yeah, it's better. Like the stuff that was added doesn't really need to be there. Musical sequence, yes, but the John Hamm scene, no.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other thing, which I think is another strength for the action scenes, the girls, the actresses, they all went through like really intense training on this movie, like with weapons and martial arts and weight training and everything. And they actually got I wrote his name down, Damon Caro, to choreograph all the fights. He did all the Bourne movies, the Jason Bourne movies.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're good action sequences. And like
Yeah.
you said, Snyder knows how to shoot an action sequence. Like no like fast cuts or like excessive handheld camera work.
Queasy cam and
Yeah. He like keeps the camera at distance. You see like everything that's actually happening, and it's intense and it's visceral. And yet the actresses are going for it. They're throwing themselves into it and really selling the physicality of all the action scenes. So I mean, they really are the highlight of the movie. I just wish the rest of the movie were as fun as that.
I mean,
That's not all I got.
Very well. I mean, I think that's a perfectly awesome summary of your feelings. I mean, it's frustrating.
Yeah,
that's a lot of potential. That's a lot of potential. And I mean, it's not like Zack Snyder. I mean, he's got a lot of talent.
Yeah,
he has good ideas. He knows how to make a movie. Yeah, it seems like recently his work has kind of in a downward slump, but I think it's because
he's stuck.
I think it's just kind of expected of him to make superhero movies now. Like, I mean,
yeah, he's kind of stuck in the DC thing, which, yeah, I would rather see him doing movies like Sucker Punch, to be honest.
Yeah,
like
I'd like him to
wild
take
ideas.
Yeah, because with Sucker Punch would have been a good freshman effort. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it really would have. I mean, if that was his first movie, I would have been like, fuck. But I mean, it wasn't. It was like his fifth. You know what I mean? It was.
Yeah.
Come on now, like you're better than this. Like you should know how to construct something a little bit more thoughtfully. You should know how to engage us as an audience a little better. Your action sequences are there. Nobody can take that away from you. But everything between those scenes, dude, up your game. Step it up, sir.
Yeah, maybe that's why Watchmen was such a great film, because the story, the characters, thanks to Alan Moore, they are there.
Yes.
And that's solid. And you put Zack Snyder's visual technical skill on top of that, you got yourself an amazing movie.
There you go. And that's what Watchmen is. I don't give a shit what anyone says. I'll fight you in the street. I mean, I really think it's a great piece of filmmaking. I really love that flick a lot. Wish I could say the same for Sucker Punch.
Yes. Sadly. But
I am glad you picked this one, because it's the first movie that I didn't really care for out of this. Like when you picked Ravenous, I was like, fuck, it's a really good flick. And I'm sorry I hadn't seen this sooner. With Sucker Punch, it's like
I didn't need to see this.
It's not so much I didn't need to see it. I'm trying to get rid of that mentality, but it's more the fact of I saw it. I don't need to see it again. I can see what it's trying to do right. I can give this movie credit, but
yeah, ultimately just didn't do it for you.
Just didn't do it for me. That isn't to say that I hated this movie, but I likely won't watch it again unless you really, really want to.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It is one that I like discussing, and that I think there are things potentially
it's a fun discussion. I mean, it's not flat out bad, and that to me is the most painful kind of movie. The most painful viewing experience is a film that isn't terrible but isn't great. That's the hardest movie for me to watch. A terrible movie, it's easy to watch because it's fucking terrible. It's just like, wow, I can't believe this is even on screen right now. And a great movie is easy to watch because it's fucking great. You're sucked in. You're invested. The time passes and you have no idea. With Sucker Punch, I literally had to turn my phone off and put it in my nightstand because I was like, I just wanted to check my emails and stuff like that. And I'm the kind of guy, when I watch a movie, I watch a fucking movie. I'm not on my phone. I'm not doing shit while I'm watching a film. I really invest my time in movies. That's why I don't really watch a ton of movies, because it's like when I do, that's what I do. I know some guys, that will, be on their phone or have friends over and they're all talking and having fun, is kind of briefly watching this movie. I sit down just off camera, and I stare at the TV. You know, I give it my full undivided attention.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like with this film, my attention was floating. Yeah, of course, I was under the influence of stuff, but that's me all the time. Essentially, that's not a big deal. It's just more the fact that it just didn't invest me. It just didn't have me rooting for it. I wanted to like this movie. I wanted to root for it. I like Zack Snyder. I think he's talented. The dude tells good stories. The dude makes pretty movies. Even Batman versus Superman. There's some shit in that movie that sticks with me. Things I think about sometimes. Scenes I really enjoyed looking at. I don't know. This one just kind of falls a little short for me.
Yeah. Ultimately, yeah, I guess if it's a film where if you want to see, beautiful girls fighting dragons and orcs and steampunk World War I soldiers and robots and giant samurai armor, this is a movie to watch because those are really the scenes worth watching, I think, in it. And then just everything else is probably just gonna frustrate you and disturb you and make you wonder what was really going through Zack Snyder's head. But I think it's interesting for that reason. That's what drew me to it and made me want to talk about it.
And that's fair. I don't think that this was a bad movie to discuss. I don't think it was a bad choice. It's just the first one that I wasn't really head over heels about.
Which is okay.
And that's okay. And we say, you know, and that's our motto. It's not about being good. It's not about being bad. It's not about being high budget. It's not about being independent. It's about talking. It's about watching. It's about experiencing. It's about discussion. And honestly, I mean, shit, we could literally throw a dart at, you know, our bookshelf or movie shelf and talk about any flick that we want. But I don't know. I just feel like, you know, Mega Movie Monday, it's, you know, I want to talk about movies and see movies that don't get talked about a lot. Not so much obscure films, because there's major films that nobody really talks about that much. And
I feel like Sucker Punch 2 is one that gets dismissed, and I think it deserves a little more thought than that for what it's trying to do.
Just to humor me, what is the tomato meter on this flick?
I always find this interesting, looking at the reaction, the general reaction to something. It's the tomato meter for Sucker Punch is 23%.
23%.
Yeah, and it's that the consensus is about,
put it at like between 45 and 50.
Yeah, I think it deserves a little bit more, of a following, and I think potentially it could start to accumulate a cult following if it hasn't already. Because I could see some people really being into this kind of movie. And the consensus, is about what you would expect. It's technically impressive and loaded with eye-catching images, but without characters or plot to support them, all of Sucker Punch's visual thrills are for naught.
Besides that last part, I mean, I think that's the first tomato meter I've ever kind of agreed with. The percentage is pretty low, but
that's the thing. Yeah, this movie is hated, and I don't think it really deserves to be hated.
Yeah, it doesn't deserve to be hated.
Yeah,
it's not.
For all its failings, I think it's one worth maybe perhaps taking a look at and talked about a little bit. And unless
I'd say this movie's worth watching once,
and then discussed with some friends and fellow film fans,
and then move on. The thing is, though, I mean, at the end of the day, I just want to see more Zack Snyder movies. I want to see more Zack Snyder doing what he wants to do. I don't want to see him being, you know, a puppet for DC and Warner Bros. I want to see this dude make more shit that comes out of his head. I want to see more of what he has to say. And hopefully we see that Zack Snyder return one day. That would be awesome. I think that'd be fantastic. But until then,
I guess this has been another Mega Movie Monday with me, DisRegarding Henry,
and me, Film School Failures, Felix Milan.
And we'll see you next time. I think actually, because it's October, we want to get into the scary movies, the horror movies. So we'll hopefully start posting 2 episodes, twice as many per week, to get really into the Halloween spirit.
We're gonna double production, baby.
So until we see you then, you can subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. You can tune in every Saturday at 1 p.m. for my live show video.
Pacific time.
Yeah, Pacific Standard Time. For my live show Video Drone, where I talk about movies and you can interact. Check out other videos on my channel. You know, that whole thing that you probably already know about. Yeah, I think, Felix, have you like really set up your channel yet or
Fuck
anything?
no.
Well, until then, I'll keep posting the link to your channel in the description for the
My
videos,
one video I have on my channel right now that pisses people off.
which is funny. That is, yeah, seeing all the negative comments. You have people who don't get it. That's pretty funny.
Oh man, yeah. There's I'm not very well liked on YouTube right now, but don't
But,
care.
but hopefully we see more from you in the future.
Yeah, I'll
And
get there.
yeah, until next time, see you later. Bye bye.
Peace.